So the God gets this question asked all the time. JTG, what got you into professional wrestling? What made you want to be a professional wrestler? What made you start? Where did you start? Who told you about it? Let me tell you, let's go back to where it all started. Straight out of high school, 17 years old, I moved to my uncle's house in North Carolina to pursue my career in professional wrestling. There was a wrestling school outside of Charlotte, about an hour. I believe it was Raleigh. At the time, there was no wrestling schools in New York at the time. No schools of credibility or nothing that I heard of, and I was eager to get in the ring. And you want to know how eager I was? On my 18th birthday, December 10th, that was the first time I stepped into a wrestling ring, and I got my first day of training here in North Carolina. After 6 months of that, my trainer, he started not showing up. I show up early. He didn't even show up. So I just started learning and picking up stuff from the other students that were there training at the time. I wouldn't even say they were students. There was just like an open ring, and so a few of the up and coming indie talent was training, and I just watched and I observed. I didn't really get in the ring too much because I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I didn't have a trainer there, so I just watched. I drove sometimes an hour just to watch. But I was learning. I was around. That was the environment that I wanted to be around. Fast forward, I went to an independent show in North Carolina, and I bumped into a tough enough superstar that got eliminated. Can't remember his name, but I remember him from the show, and we were taking down the ring. I wasn't on the show, but at that time, I knew I wanted to be around that environment, and I needed to be around the indies. So I started showing up to shows and helping taking down the ring. I met him, spoke to him, and he told me that he's going to OVW, and that was the place to be. I've never heard of OVW. It's in Kentucky. He said Kentucky, and it went straight out of my mind because I was from New York. I'm from the city. I moved to Charlotte. I have family here, but Kentucky, that's way out of my my jurisdiction. I didn't have anybody there, no family, so it was just in the back of my head. Then I remember I moved back to New York for a little bit. I went to a pay-per-view in Madison Square Garden. I believe it was Survivor Series. And Rico from the manager from 3 Minute Warning, I saw him at WWE New York. And I was able to strike a conversation with him, and I asked him, Rico, what wrestling schools did you go to? I'm looking for a new wrestling school. And he told me he went to OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. That was my second sign. I wasn't 100% sure yet if I wanted to make that move, but I did get a third sign. I think I heard another talent talking about OVW, and then I finally went on the internet, looked it up, and I made a decision. I was going to take the bus from New York to Louisville, Kentucky, because I didn't want to move there just yet. It's too much for me at the time, culture shock. So at the time I transferred my jobs to North Carolina to New York. I was working at AMC Times Square movie theater, and that was a great job. But the thing at working at the movie theater is their most busiest days is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the weekend. And guess when training was? Saturday. And I would have had to leave Friday afternoon to make it there Saturday morning. So I had to have a long conversation with my manager. I explained to him this was my dream. I would love for the AMC and AMC family to support me on this journey. And I was able to cut a good enough promo for my managers. They wasn't supposed to, but they let me travel right after work. After I was finished doing my shift, I was able to leave, go from Times Square, go straight to Penn Station, and get on a Greyhound bus and head to Louisville, Kentucky. I'll get to Louisville, Kentucky on Saturdays. I would train for 2 hours, and I would take the bus back to New York City. After that became too much of a hassle, the bus would break down. Sometimes I was late for practice, and it was just really crazy to be traveling 16 ridiculous hours for 2 hours of training. So the next step was to move to Kentucky. When I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, I lived out of a motel for the first couple of months. And then that's when I moved to Kentucky. That's when I met Shad, and Shad was my pretty much. I don't. It was like he was like a big brother angel, the big brother that I didn't ask for, but he took me under his wing, and I went from my motel from a couple of months, and I went into moving into Shad's old apartment. Shad helped me get my first apartment. He moved out and he moved into a new apartment, and I was in charge of his old lease. So I got my first apartment at 19. Yeah, I got my first apartment when I was 19. OVW was like my college years. I lived there for about 4 or 5 years before I finally moved. I got the call when I was 21 years old to the WWE. Shad and I weren't initially tag team partners at first. My first WWE tryout was with my original tag team partner. You guys might know him as Abraham Washington on ECW. Yes, that was my first tag team partner. We were called the Neighbor Hoodies. That was the tag team. Tag team that we consist of, and yeah, we had a tryout match. We had the Crime Time look, but we didn't have the Crime Time swag at the time. But we had our tryout match, and anybody who's listening who's down and out right now, I had my worst match at my WWE tryout. My worst match was in front of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and the Man of 1,000 Holes, Dean Malenko. After the match, they were just looking at my tag team and the other tag team that I wrestled like we had no clue what we were doing in the ring. And I knew what I was doing in the ring. It was just, miscommunication and yeah, let's just chop it up to that, miscommunication. But it was the worst match of my life. But maybe I think a year later, or maybe a couple of months later, I was able to redeem myself, and Vince saw me for the first time. And I wasn't even wrestling. Vince never, when Vince McMahon hired me, this is how it went down. Shad and I did some vignettes. Those same vignettes you guys saw when we debuted. Shad and I did those on our own in OVW. Shad and I did that in OVW because Al Snow told us, we were the tag team champions at the time, and he didn't want us to have a match every week to get over. He believed that Shad and I had enough personality and charisma to get over outside of the ring, and he was absolutely right. You got a cameraman, and we started shooting a bunch of funny heelish skits that got the attention of Vince McMahon. The writers had to watch OVW tapings every week, and I was non-contract. I didn't have a contract at the time, but I was able to train with the contract class, and they paired me up with Shad Gaspard after his run with CM Punk in OVW. After that, he had a little title run with CM Punk, a little title feud. They paired Shad and I together, and from there we were inseparable. We became tag team champions the week after I debuted, and then we were just winning matches, and we were having matches with, at the time we were in OVW. They'll bring in Kane paired with another OVW top star to wrestle us, and we achieved and still keep the belts. It was we had fun. But that was the skits. Vince didn't see any of that. What he saw was the vignettes that Shad and I had fun with. The writers went back to him and said, Vince, you gotta see this. These guys are funny. And Vince saw it, and he said, I want those guys. That's what I want on Raw. I want that on my brand. And they said, well, the little one, he's not signed. He's like, well, sign him. Get him up here. And then that happened, and I believe I got signed in June. And July, August, September, October. Yeah, Crime Time made their debut. And it all happened so fast. And that was my journey. Well, a short version of my journey to the WWE. If you're loving the God stories and you got a topic of your own, or you have a story of your own that you have with the God, leave it in the comments and I will definitely get right to it. Please like, subscribe, and catch another episode of the God's YouTube channel. Cheers.